According to news reports last week, there really is a Gulf War syndrome. 3 of them, actually. How many of us are surprised? Evidently, the people in charge of the military and government are still claiming to be surprised, or are claiming that the results of the most recent research are flawed. All those people who got sick as a result of their experiences in the Gulf War are faking it, seems to be the implication. Of course, the other possibility is that the government doesn't want to admit that it simply uses and throws away working people where it's convenient. 10 years ago next month, the U.S. Navy and I officially separated on their terms. The Navy refused to recognize my terms for our separation, although things worked out without prison time, so perhaps I shouldn't complain. But I do find myself wondering about those people who have the "If you love freedom, thank a veteran" bumper stickers. The historical record would indicate that the freedoms Americans enjoy are the result of concerted political pressure by citizens, especially unions, upon our government. The freedoms of the American people have not been at issue since the War of 1812. Now, it's certainly true that World War II represented the interests of all people, and not just the ruling class, although every other war this country has fought has actually been at the expense of working people for the sole benefit of rich people. If you love your freedom, thank a union member. Let's think for a moment about Vietnam. I believe it was in the decade after that travesty of justice that these seemingly pro-veteran bumper stickers appeared. During the war in Vietnam, our government conducted the most brutal bombing campaign ever conceived, as well as treating our troops as callously as the supposed enemy. Our government decided that its goal of defoliating someone else's countryside was more important than the health and safety of the troops fighting the war. Thus, lots of veterans in the Vietnam War needlessly came down with various and previously unknown neurological disorders as well as various forms of cancer. During the war in the Persian Gulf, the same kinds of decisions were made. To the U.S. government, ordinary American people are disposable. American corporations sold Iraq chemical and biological warfare agents. American planes bombed the bunkers housing these agents, and inevitably, American and other troops were poisoned. And so, not to be outdone by another supposed enemy, the American military decided to give our troops cocktails of so-called preventative agents in combinations that had never been tested, so our troops became guinea pigs for these chemical warfare tests. And, lo and behold, many of them are now suffering debilitating diseases. The issue is not whether our troops deserve or don't deserve support from the rest of us. The real issue is the nature of our support for those serving in the military. Having been one of them, it seems to me that unquestioned support for the warmongering of the U.S. government and its complete disregard for the lives of human beings is the greatest disservice we can do to all current and former members of the military. In my hometown, there's a leader of the local VFW who writes into the local paper every few months to make some point about supposedly supporting veterans. I've always found the reactionary tone of these letters disturbing. Many people seem to think that supporting veterans means unquestioned support for the imperialist policies of the U.S. government. I wonder if this guy has figured out yet that the military doesn't support veterans, so veterans are foolish to support the military. If we had all rejected the Gulf War, imagine how many thousands of our previously healthy young men and women would have been saved. Imagine how many millions of Iraqi children would have been saved. And what would have been lost? The profits of some oil companies and the power of a dictator called Emir in a puny little country called Kuwait. It was not worth even the loss of a night's sleep to me, let alone my life or health, to reinstall a dictator called Emir. This was the general line of my disagreement with the Navy. And screw the oil companies, who were, after all, the real financial beneficiaries of the Gulf War. Let them send their own children off to kill and die. The lives of American troops are far too valuable to be sacrificed in this way. But of course, that's not how the ruling class thinks. They send the children of working people off to kill and die to protect their profits. You know, if you really love your freedom, thank a trade unionist. If you really love your country, keep it from going to war to protect the profit interests of an increasingly minute group of corporate owners. This is Richard Curtis.